CNN's exclusive new poll asking Americans about Donald Trump's criminal trial. It's being released for the first time right now here in the Situation Room. CNN political director David Chalian is here to reveal the results. Take us through the numbers, David.
Sure, Wolf. We have this brand new poll conducted by SSRS, and I want you to look here. We are seeing a really interesting development. Americans, compared to last August, are more likely to say across all four of Donald Trump's criminal trials here that if the charges are true, it's irrelevant to his fitness for office. And take a look where that is most acute. It's in the hush money payment trial. So back in August, it was 39% of Americans in our poll that said, indeed, if these charges are true, for which he's on trial for in New York, that it would be irrelevant to Donald Trump's fitness for office. That's grown. Now 45% say it's irrelevant. And what you see is across efforts to overturn the 2020 election, across the classified documents case, across the January 6th attack on the Capitol, you see growth for the position that these charges, if true, are irrelevant to his fitness for office. That's welcome news for the Trump campaign. There's little doubt about that. Now, this issue of the gag order in this hush money trial, 42% of Americans in our poll, the plurality, say Trump's behavior during this trial, Wolf, is inappropriate. It has been mostly inappropriate. Only a quarter say it's been appropriate. About a third say they have no opinion. Obviously, you'd imagine there's a big partisan split behind these numbers, Wolf.
And you know, a quick question, David. What does the poll show when CNN asked Trump supporters if they would continue their support for Trump, even if he were convicted?
Yes. So this is a question we asked not just about this hush money trial, but convicted of any crime. And as you noted, this is among people who in this poll tell us they're supporting Donald Trump in the 2024 election. So among the Trump supporters in this poll, 3/4 of them, 76%, say they're going to support him no matter what, even if he's a convicted criminal. But a quarter, 24%, of Trump supporters say they might reconsider their support if indeed he's convicted of a crime. Now, I just want to note this 24%, about 8 in 10 of them say they would never considering voting for Joe Biden. So just reconsidering support for Trump doesn't necessarily mean that's a vote for Joe Biden. But we wanted to dig in and find out what is behind this 24%. What does this group of perhaps softer Trump supporters, what does it look like? And so we broke it down here demographically, and I just want to show you here, Wolf. This side here is among those, the 24%, that would reconsider among Trump supporters if indeed he was convicted of a crime. Nearly 2/3 of them are younger. They're under the age of 50. Half of them are people of color. 63%, nearly 2/3, believe Biden legitimately won the election, not election deniers. Half are political independents or moderates. This is not what you call the Trump base. And that's why they are in the reconsider category. They're softer Trump supporters. Compare that to the 3/4 of Trump supporters in this poll who say they're staying with him no matter what. That looks like the Trump coalition you know, which is that they're older, they're whiter. Only 22% of them think Biden legitimately won the 2020 election. So this coalition is really interesting to look at what that is, that quarter of Trump support that might reconsider if he is convicted, Wolf.
David Chalian, thank you very much for that exclusive new poll result. I want to bring in our CNN political analyst, Maggie Haberman, who was inside the Trump trial in New York earlier today. Maggie, thanks so much for joining us. I know you've been watching this trial up close inside the courtroom on an almost daily basis. What did you observe about Trump's demeanor today, and where is his head at right now?
Sure. So, Wolf, he shook his head several times as David Pecker was testifying. It's actually among the most animated we have seen him. It's the kind of reactions that he had during, say, the E. Jean Carroll trial, although he was much more pronounced there in January earlier this year. But this was uncomfortable testimony from David Pecker, walking the jury through a narrative about, engaging with Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, about killing stories about Trump's involvement with 2 women. And in particular, Pecker told stories about engaging with Trump while Trump was president and having a conversation that related to one of these women.
You know, it's interesting. We're just getting the exhibits shown in court today, Maggie, including a photo of Trump and Pecker at the White House. This is where Pecker testified Trump asked him how Karen McDougal is doing. How significant is that?
Well, I think it could be very significant, Wolf. I mean, I think that you're seeing right now, earlier today, we saw Trump's lawyers trying to suggest that David Pecker's memory was faulty, asking questions about contradictory answers he had given in different interviews with prosecutors. And I think that you will see that as a theme. But to your point about that picture, there's documentation that backs up what the story that Pecker is telling. There were a lot of references to text messages, to emails. And so the fact that Pecker, and those are supposed to speak to Pecker's credibility. The fact that Pecker is saying that he, had this conversation with Trump where Trump was knowledgeable enough about Karen McDougal to ask, how is she doing, I think could end up being significant. They also elicited, the prosecutors, from David Pecker, an answer about essentially his motivations, where it was, do you have animus for Trump? And David Pecker's answer was, he was my mentor. I'm paraphrasing, but he used the word mentor. And he was, doing sort of an in sorrow as opposed to in anger. It's notable because the defense lawyers in their opening statements suggested Michael Cohen who is a key witness in this case, is acting out of personal grievance. And they're trying to show that actually the fact set is going to be the same across the board. Now, we will see what Trump's defense lawyers do in terms of trying to question credibility, but today was uncomfortable testimony.
It was interesting. On the immunity hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court today, Maggie, how is the Trump team thinking about what could practically be a major victory for him, delaying the federal election subversion trial?
They've been very happy, the Trump team, since it was learned that this oral argument was going to be on the calendar. It meant that there was going to be a delay, that the probability of a January 6th federal trial, related trial, happening before Election Day was much slimmer. You heard questions that suggested from the Supreme Court justices earlier today that they are open to some argument that there is some level of immunity granted a president. And so Trump's team is feeling very good about that case. We'll see what ends up happening, but at the moment, this trial in Manhattan is the only one that is taking place this year that we know of, and right now it doesn't look like that's going to change.
We'll see what happens. Maggie Haberman, thank you very, very much.